I'm sure many of you recall when you were at school having to learn poetry. Some of us struggled and some of us found it quite easy. Well, the poem that you've just heard this morning, John Masefield's poem, Cargoes, was one that my generation learned at school back in Scotland. In fact, the other week I was talking to a colleague in Camberwell, and she said that she actually learnt this one in Melbourne, but they learnt to sing it. They actually sung it. Anyhow, when I was able to recite this poem, I didn't understand its meaning. And now, many years later, when I think I understand it, I can no longer recite it. John Masefield believed that of all the changes of the passing years, the most important is the change in what people regard as vitally important. And in his famous poem, Masefield examines different historical periods and what each period regarded as vital cargo. The first verse of our poem describes what King Solomon regarded as vital cargo. Now, Queen Quirine refers to a ship that doesn't have sails, it's not powered, it's got 5 banks of rowers. So many people rowing the ship. So Queen Quirine of Nineveh from distant Ophir, rowing home to haven in sunny Palestine, with a cargo of ivory and apes and peacocks, sandalwood, cedarwood, and sweet white wine. During his reign, Solomon greatly expanded trade, and his ships brought back to Palestine hewn stones, ivory, and the finest ornamental timbers. And with them, he built a great temple that would hopefully convey something of the majesty of God. And the ships also brought jeweled, plumed peacocks, monkeys, and apes, an endless source of delight to children. It's significant that when Solomon's reputation for wisdom was at its highest, he regarded such things as vital cargo. Solomon knew that we need beautiful things and we need exciting things to lift our spirits. Solomon seems to have measured life not by the number of breaths taken, but by the number of times we hold our breath in wonder. Without leisure and laughter, without people to love and lovely things to admire, life is impoverished. Now, in the days of the first Queen Elizabeth, which was about the 16th century, precious stones and gold, most of them plundered, were regarded by many as being all-important. They were the vital cargo. And so in the second verse, we hear stated, stately Spanish galleons coming from the isthmus, dipping through the tropics by the palm green shores, with a cargo of diamonds, emeralds and amethysts, topazes and cinnamons, and gold moidores, which is a fancy word for coins, gold coins. In the 16th century, women played little part in public life, and having little else to interest them, the prime concern of the better off was outward adornment, and gold and jewels were indicative of a woman's worth and her place in the social ladder. And in our reading from Peter this morning, we can see that the writer thought differently. Let not your adornment be the outward things of braided hair and gold ornaments, but let your adornment be that of the inward personality of the heart. Let it be the unfading loveliness of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. And the final verse of Macefield's poem describes what he regarded as the most striking characteristic of the late 19th century. Dirty British coaster with a salt-caked smokestack butting through the channel in the mad March days with a cargo of tine coal, road rail, pig lead, firewood, ironweed, and cheap tin trays. Manufactured goods had begun to hold undisputed sway in people's lives. Living as we do in a culture of artificially generated needs, and many of us still spend money that we cannot afford purchasing things we do not really need in order to impress people. And from time to time we hear calls for greater truth in advertising. But in one respect, there is more truth in advertising than many of us are willing to admit. The hidden persuaders, the advertisers, have accurately gauged our priorities and values. They know how strong is the temptation to regard things possessed, salary earned, clothes worn, car driven as vital cargo, the present-day equivalent of Elizabethan diamonds and emeralds. Buy the right things, experiences and sensations, and you shall transcend this mundane humanity and know what it is to be happy. This message is widespread within the advertising industry. By contrast, it saddened Jesus to see human beings trying to satisfy their deepest longings with an abundance of possessions. Jesus, our teacher and our guide, knew more is not always better, and that there is too much of the divine in us, in each of us, to be permanently satisfied with material things, no matter how attractive or glittering they may be. For Jesus, the earth as something to be possessed, something to be grasped by possessive fingers, was of little worth. And he laid his hands on as little of it as any person ever did. But as a thing to be loved, Jesus deemed the world infinitely precious. Jesus was certain that great interests, great enthusiasms, great loves, and much serving, these are the ingredients of the only greatness that will satisfy and last. In following the way of Jesus, may each one of us here today discover these truths in our lives. And in closing, I would like to invite each of you to reflect upon two questions. Firstly, in the year 2226, what is vitally important to you? What's vitally important to you? And secondly, What is vitally important to us as a congregation, as Toorak Uniting Church, the body of Christ in this place? What's vitally important to this congregation?